want to welcome you to the First United Methodist Church presentation of the Living Last Supper. Before we start, I want to say a couple of words of thank you. First to Patty Higginbotham and to Ginger Cheatham for making the costumes. I want to say thanks to Rhonda for coming and playing interlude, to Tammy for she's put a lot of work in on some of the behind the scenes things. And I want to say thanks to all of these men who have given their time to be a part of this. So if you join me, there's a gathering responsive bring there in your bulletin for us to start. And this is the judgment, that the light is come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light.
God is light, in whom there is no darkness at all.
For God sent the Son into the world, not to condemn the world, but that the world might be saved through him.
Everyone who does evil hates the light, and does not come to the light.
Come, let us worship in spirit and truth. Let us pray. God, as we approach Easter, we're reminded again of your love and your grace. We just ask that in our service tonight, that our hearts and minds might be prepared to experience once again the great truth of resurrection and the saving work of Christ in Easter. In Christ's name we pray.
Long enough. Okay, go figure. Okay, can y'all hear me all right? How are y'all tonight? Good, good. On the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb is sacrificed, Jesus' disciples said to him, "Where do you want us to go and make the preparations for you to eat the Passover?" So he sent two of his disciples, saying to them, "Go into the city, and a man carrying a jar of water will meet you. Follow him, and wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher asks, where is my guest room, where I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large room upstairs, furnished and ready. Make preparations for us there." So the disciples set out and went to the city, and found everything as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover meal. When it was evening, he came with the 12. And when they had taken their places and were eating, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." The disciples began to be sorrowful and to say to him one by one, "Is it I? Is it I?" Leonardo, versatile genius of the Renaissance, was born in Vinci, Italy in 1452. Though he excelled in many fields, he is best remembered today because of two wonderful paintings, the Mona Lisa and the Last Supper. In 1494, when Leonardo was 42, he was commissioned by the Duke of Milan to decorate the dining room of the Covenant Church, which was the favorite shrine of the Duke's young bride. As an appropriate theme for the dining room, the painter chose the Last Supper. His painting was not intended to be a faithful reproduction of the original scene, as it had taken place in the 1st century Palestine, but as it might have taken place in 15th century Italy. He chose what he considered the most dramatic moment in the Last Supper. In this living dramatization tonight, the 12 apostles speak their minds to themselves, to each other, and to the Lord, in the light of the words they have just heard Jesus speak. "One of you will betray me." I invite you now to listen to what the disciples have to say and to ask yourself what you might say if you had just heard Jesus say, "One of you will betray me."
My name is James, but since there are many men that bear this familiar name, I'm also called James the Little. or James the Lesser, since I'm a lesser size of other men by the same name. My father also was named Alphaeus, and also I'm named by his name by saying James, son of Alphaeus. I remember when I didn't meet him, but I saw the master for the first time. I was traveling down the road where John was baptizing people, and I was curious. And so I pulled over, stopped at the side of the trail, and I heard Jesus ask John, "Will you baptize me?" And he said, "No." He said, "I insist." And so Jesus insisted. And after John baptized the Lord, the heavens opened up, and the Holy Spirit descended on him in the form of a dove. And there's a loud voice we heard said, "This is my beloved Son, and I'm well pleased." Then, it was a year after his public ministries that he chose me to be an apostle, one of the 12 apostles. And since that time, I walked with him, I talked with him, stayed with him, prayed with him. But now, one of us is to betray him. Surely, it'd have to be madness for this to happen. Surely, the betrayer would have to be mad. But I kept thinking to myself, is it I? Is it I?
Like Zacchaeus, I am a tax collector. Some call me Levi, and others call me Matthew, Matthew the publican. When my character changed through my fellowship with Jesus, he changed my name as well. He called me one day when I was in my office collecting taxes. "Follow me," he said, and I rose and followed him. Later, I gave him a great feast in my home, and many of his disciples and my business friends were present. When some of the Pharisees complained about Jesus eating with publicans and sinners, Jesus said, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick do." Since that day when I repented and followed him, I have studied our scriptures closely and am now convinced that Jesus is the fulfillment of every prophecy about the coming Messiah, God's anointed one. I have listened carefully to his sermons. Someday I hope to write a paper proving he is the Messiah from our sacred writings and recording the heart of his sermon about the good news of the kingdom of God, the sermon he delivered on the mountain in Galilee 3 years ago. It is a new gospel, good news for all the world. And yet, he has just spoken bad news, tragic news that one of us will betray him. Who can it be? Will they suspect me because I was once a hated tax collector? Do I suspect myself? Is it I? Is it I?
I am Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, the man who first brought his own brother to the Lord. I am not a gifted man, but just an ordinary, average man, like any one of you. But I've tried to do what I could to serve the Master with the gifts and talents that I have. The others called me Andrew, the bringer, because it seems that all I have ever done is to bring someone else to Jesus. I brought my brother Peter to Jesus and have gloried in a gradual transformation in his life. I found a little lad with the 5 loaves and 2 fish that day when Jesus fed the 5,000. And then just recently, some Greeks come looking for the Master. And I was called into service again to take the Greeks to Jesus. He must have seen something of value in me, which the others overlooked. For he chose me to be one of his 12 apostles. I have been very close to the Master ever since. I may not have been in the inner circle like Peter, but I wasn't in the outer circle either. I've been a friend and companion to my Lord ever since. What greater gift could life afford a fisherman? And now one of us is to betray him. It is unthinkable. Who could it be? How could he get away with it in his heart? Could it be Andrew, the bringer? Is it I? Is it I?
James, the brother of John. I followed Jesus with my brother after he called us while we were mending our nets at the Sea of Galilee with our father, Zebedee, one day almost 3 years ago. We were honored when Jesus wanted us as his disciples and were humbled when he chose both of us to be among the 12 apostles. Our mother, Siloam, was quite ambitious on our behalf and urged us to press our claims upon Jesus. En route to Jerusalem last week, we made this request of him: Teacher, grant us the seat, one at your right and the other at your left, when you come into your kingdom. He replied, "You do not know what you're asking, or are you able to? Drink the cup that I am to drink, or be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized." He said, "Lord, we are able." Then he told us that we would surely drink his cup and be
baptized with his baptism, but it was not in his power or grant, and the right and the privilege of the sitting of his right and left hand in his kingdom. The others were angry when they heard of our request. Jesus then reminded us that he who would be first must be the servant of all, and demonstrated his word by washing our feet just before supper. And now, he who taught us the way of love is to be betrayed by one of those whom he loved. Who can it be? Why should one of us do such a thing? I keep thinking deep down inside our heart, my own heart, is it I?
I am Nathaniel, although some of my friends call me Bartholomew. I, like many of the others, am a fisherman. I was a disciple of John the Baptist, and it was John who told me of Jesus at Bethany, just beyond the Jordan. It was Philip, my friend, who came to me and said, "We have found him, the one that Moses and the prophet spoke of, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Israel." I'll never forget the question that I asked Philip that day. How can anything good come out of Nazareth? I didn't mean it in disrespect, but it was such a small, insignificant place. And those of us that knew of the town thought, how could God bless this community with the chosen one, with the anointed one? However, Philip replied and said, "Come and see." So we went. When we got there, Jesus said, "Behold, an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." And I said, "How do you know me?" He said, "Before Philip called you, I saw you underneath the fig tree." That kind of resonated, because in my country, the women who were working in the fields would take their babies and place them underneath fig trees, underneath the very large leaves, to protect their babies from the sun. So in essence, Jesus was saying, I've known you since the day that you were born. It was then that I confessed my faith. "Rabbi," I said, "you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Since that time, I have served as a disciple, as a chosen apostle. And now, when he is instituting a ceremony that is to take place at the Passover, he tells us that one of us will betray him. How can that be? How can a traitor be amongst us? And then I keep asking myself, is it I? Is it I?
I'm Thomas, sometimes known as Thomas the Twin. And while I don't look on life with gloom and despondency, I usually demand proof before I believe. I want to see before committing myself. Yet I don't think that makes me a man of doubt. Rather, I see myself as a man of dare. I remember when Mary and Martha sent word that their brother Lazarus had died. And Jesus said, "Let us go to Jerusalem. Let us go to them." Well, the others knew of the mounting opposition against Jesus in Jerusalem, and they shrank from the unseen fear and didn't want to go. And I remember how I rebuked them. I said, "Let us go with him, that we might also die with him." Why do people remember my doubts and forget my daring? Why do they remember my questions and forget my affirmations? Why is it that all they focus on is my fear and never my faith? I used to go fishing with some of the others, and I remember Jesus speaking the words of the Beatitude on the Horns of Hattin during the first year of his public ministry. I mean, I can almost almost see him rebuking the wind, healing the blind, opening the ears of the deaf, and preaching the good news to the poor. But there's mounting opposition, and his enemies are determined to destroy him. And yet he says among us, the 12, that there's a traitor. Is he referring to me? Is he talking about one of these men who are my brother? Is it I? Is it I? I am Thaddeus, one of the disciples whom Jesus called to be an apostle. Jesus chose 12 of us to become the cornerstones of the new kingdom, just as the 12 tribes were the cornerstones of the old Jewish kingdom. I feel unworthy to be numbered among his apostles, but he chose me. I well remember the day. After a night in prayer, he called us to him and gave us dominion, gave us authority over unclean spirits and the power to heal every disease and infirmity. Then he commissioned us to go forth and preach that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. He told us to be as wise as serpents and as innocent as doves, since he was sending us forth as sheep to the wolves. It is enough, he said, that the disciple be like his teacher and the servant as his master. I was in Jerusalem when he gave the great invitation, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest, for my yoke is light and my burden is light." And now, he who came to share men's burdens has a burden thrust upon him, the knowledge that one of us will betray him. Which one of us can it be? Who is the traitor? The man we least expect? Or will all of us betray him before the night is over? Philip and Peter and Judas and John and even Thaddeus? Is it I? Is it I?
All the others come from Galilee. My home is in the village of Kerith in Judea. Hence, I am known as Judas of Kerioth, or you may know me as Judas of Iscariot, the only Judean in the group. You know, the others must have trusted me because they selected me to be their treasurer, to hold their money. And Jesus must have believed in me because he chose me as one of the 12. Some say I've appropriated money for my own use, and that Jesus' word when he spoke about the love of money and the greed. goes along with it were personally directed at me. Of course, I complained when Mary washed Jesus' feet with that precious, expensive perfume. What a waste of good money. And if I conspired with the chief priest, and if I have 30 pieces of silver on my own, well, that's my affair. I believe in Jesus, but someone has to make him assert himself as God's Messiah. He refuses to make a move. Well, I have made one. He hints that he knows what I've done. He said so when he washed my feet just a few minutes ago. But I have my reasons. What would you do if you were in my place and wanted him to do something dramatic and startling to usher in his kingdom? And if you were in his place, what would you do? Should I ignore his remarks? Or like the others, should I piously, righteously ask myself, is it I? Is it I?
My name's Philip. I came from Bethsaida in Galilee, where all of my friends and I were in Bethany listening to John the Baptist. Jesus called us to become his disciples, and we all turned and followed him. I remember so well before he fed the 5,000, when he fed the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish, asking him and the others, where are we to buy bread that all of these can eat? Little did I know that Andrew was already bringing a young lad and his lunch to Jesus. When the Greeks came to me and asked for an interview with the master, I turned them over to Andrew, who brought him to Jesus. When Jesus began to tell us that God was our Heavenly Father, it was almost beyond my understanding. However, as I listened to the master, I have grown to understand his word. In fact, I can almost say that he who has seen Jesus has seen the Father, because everything one wants to find in the Father, I find in Jesus. And nothing I would not want to find in the Father do I find in the Son. And now, having seen the Father through him, he shocks us by telling us that there is a betrayer in our midst. Does the traitor know that in betraying Jesus, he is also betraying God? That in conspiring against Jesus, he is also conspiring against God? Can one of our numbers be so blind? Who can it be? Can it be Philip? Is it I? Is it I?
came to me and my brother James. We were in a boat nearby with our father Zebedee, mending our nets. He called us to follow him, and we left our boat, and we left our father immediately and followed him. Since that time, I've tried to understand Jesus by loving him. Sometimes I believe he is as much of God as will ever possess in human life. Yet I love him as a person, and he returns my love. Sometimes he calls me the beloved disciple. I've shared his trials as well as his hours of victory. I was there on the Mount of Transfiguration. We beheld his glory. Peter and I made preparation tonight for the celebration of the Passover supper in this upper room, because we were part of his inner circle. It was to me that he told about his talk with Nicodemus when he said those wonderful words, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him would have everlasting life." Someday I want to write down some of his sayings and some of his wonderful deeds, so others may read them and come to believe that he is Jesus the Christ, the Son of God, and by believing in him have life in his name. Yet he just said that one of us was a betrayer. I cannot believe it. Yet it must be so, or else he would not have said it. Who could it be? Surely not my brother, Peter or Andrew. Could it be me, John, the beloved disciple? Is it I? Is it I?
I am Simon the Zealot, or Simon Zealous. Before Jesus called me, I belonged to a group of hot-headed, bloodthirsty revolutionaries known as the Zealots. We were all for armed rebellion against Rome. We believed in crushing our enemies under their heels and establishing the ancient glory that was Israel in the days of David and Solomon. Yet Jesus told us of another kind of kingdom, the kingdom of the human heart, when God reigns there supremely. Since I heard this, I have changed my mind and also my allegiance. He has shown me that the conquest of the heart is only true, sincere, and lasting conquest. So I have given him my highest loyalty and deepest devotion. I have in military alliance unconditionally and completely surrendered myself to him, to think his thoughts, to as he loves and with whom he loves, to obey as he obeys, to serve as he serves. This surrender has not impaired me, rather it has set me free for the first time in my life. I am not afraid of Rome any longer. Rome is mighty, but God is almighty. Now the Master says there is a spiritual Roman among us, one who would attempt it by force, who can only be conquered by love. Who can it be? Matthew the publican, the big fisherman, or his brother? Or does he suspect me, since I am the only former zealot among us? Is it I? Is it I?
My brother Andrew and I were fishing on the Sea of Galilee one afternoon, casting our nets into the sea when Jesus walked by and said, "Follow me and I will make you fishers of men." We immediately left our nets and followed him one morning. He said, "Simon, put out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." I said, "Master, we have toiled all night and taken nothing. But at your word, I will let down the nets." We caught so many fish, we had to summon nearby boats just to contain the catch. When we reached the shore, I fell at his feet and said, "Depart from me, O Lord, for I am a sinful man." But he told us that thereafter we would be fishing for men. In fact, he even changed my name from Simon to Peter, which means the rock. And when I confessed him as the Christ, the Son of living God, near Caesarea Philippi, he said, "On this rock I will build my church." But a moment later, when I protested him going to Jerusalem to suffer the death at the hands of evil men, he rebuked me and said, "Get thee behind me, Satan. So I am a mixture of good and evil, of godliness and devilishness." Tonight, when he said that one of us would betray him, I promised to follow him even unto death. But he warned me that before the cock crowed twice, I would have denied him 3 times. Even though others call me the big fisherman, in his presence I feel small and unworthy. Will I deny him tonight before the rooster crows? And if I do, what will he do? Will he deny me? Tonight before the rooster crows. And if I do, what will he do? Will he disown me? Will he deny me? Will he close the doors of the kingdom to me? Was he referring to me when he said, "One of you will betray me"? If I knew who that scoundrel was, I'd pierce his heart with this knife I hold in my hand. But maybe it would be my own heart that I would pierce. God grant it may not be so. Yet I keep wondering and saying to myself, "Lord, is it I? Is it I?"
Come this morning, this evening for communion, and as you come down the aisle using a tinction, I'll give you some piece of bread, dip it in the juice and take it, and then you can come to the rail if you'd like to pray, as long as you would like to. Otherwise, we just ask that you leave quietly to the narthex or outside as we kind of end on a somber and solemn note. So I invite you to be coming down the middle aisle.